So what we worked out before the race, that what helped me a lot is that you just told me this bottle has to be empty by kilometer 30. I wasn't really focusing on just drinking every 50 minutes. So the only thing I was focused on that this bottle is empty by kilometer 30, and
chucking it down at 29.
Yeah, exactly.
Like on a good party day.
Welcome back to Fuelin Sessions. My name is Scott Tyndall and I'm your host today. This podcast is sponsored by Fuelin, the AI-powered nutrition app that is helping athletes fuel and perform at their best and also be their healthiest. And today I'm joined by two very special guests, both Germans. And I'm really interested in this one because as some of you may know, we have fully translated the Fuelin app into German, which I think is going to be released very shortly. And as such, we will be fully integrating with Nick Staggenborg's app, which is called Pushing Limits. And we are also currently integrated with Human Go, which is Frederic Funk's app. And so without further ado, I want to welcome Nick Staggenborg, and apologies for the pronunciation of your last name, Nick, and Freddy Funk. Guys, welcome.
Hi. Yeah, thanks for having me. So, Scott, we can do it in German then when you fully translate it.
I was actually going to start off. I had a dream the other day that I actually introduced the whole first part of this in German, and it went down really, really badly. And you were like, stop talking. And so I was like, yeah, I'm not even going to try. So weirdly enough, I actually studied German for 4 years at high school level. So I did do it for 4 years, and apparently I was okay at it, but I did give up, and it's been many, many years since I've had a real go at speaking German. And I probably, now that obviously I'm working with Freddie and have been for the past year, and know Jan and Daniela and yourself, Nick, I think maybe it's time to brush up on my German.
I think it's a good practice if you just switch your Fuelin app now to the German one. So,
mate, I've done it. I'm actually
doing
the
best practice.
Yeah, I've been doing it. I've been looking at Frühstück. Is that good pronunciation for breakfast or not?
Oh, Frühstück. Yeah,
Frühstück. I said Frühstück. Frühstück. Very embarrassing.
I was just guessing if you mean like fructose or a Frühstück.
No, Frühstück. So yes, my app is in German because obviously I've been looking at it and testing it out. So it is, as you say, it's probably a really good opportunity. But look, guys, Nick, probably a good opportunity for you to introduce yourself, who you are and what you're doing and why you're on the show today.
Yeah, hi guys, I'm Nick from Pushing Limits, and so I've been doing triathlon content in the internet for years, and now we're switching into the app game as well, building our own training app, and have a Fuelin integration ready for the German launch, and very excited about that one. So that our training is available in the Fuelin app as well, and people can make good use of the Fuelin tracking of nutrition and all the recommendation you guys have, and our athletes can make use of that as well.
Perfect. And Nick, just a real quick one on the Pushing Limits app. Just give us a quick overview of what it is and how it works.
Basically, it's just an all-in-one training platform. So you have one payment, and it's everything you need, from training plans to like all your data, all the analytics you need. We have a few nutrition recipes in there as well. You can put in your smart trainer, write the workouts in the app. So basically, we really have everything you need. You can link your Garmin, your Wahoo, your Coros, whatever, your Apple Watch, sync it, and it's basically a one-stop shop for training.
Awesome, mate. I'm looking forward to as soon as this integration goes live, which is within the week. and I'm looking forward to getting stuck into it and getting my training in order. And Freddie, you're hanging in the wings, mate. Sorry.
No problem.
Mate, good to have you on board.
I was
well.
interested. I actually didn't know. I didn't really know all this stuff. What Nick just told us.
I can give you a voucher code and you can try it out.
You might have some opposition from his platform. And Freddie, do you want to just give us a little bit of an intro? Obviously, we know who you are, but for those who don't, do you want to just introduce yourself, and then you can obviously just give us a bit of background?
Yeah, I'm not sure if we already did it at the podcast with Daniela, which we recorded before Roth, but yeah, I'm Fred Funk, German professional triathlete, and racing on the full distance, Ironman distance since this year, and also since this year working together with Scott and Fuelin to work on my nutrition game within the race, but also like outside of the race, the training and all that. And yeah, I think it helped me to step up a bit, and it will also help me in the future, especially for next year when I try to focus even more on the Ironman distance, and hopefully try to qualify for the Ironman World Championship in Kona. So
yeah, thanks, mate. It's obviously been a big year because as you mentioned, it's been a transition for you from I guess you're still doing the T100 and the T100, the 70.3 distance, but you stepped up into the full distance this year, and we got to catch up in Roth. And I think it's probably a really good opportunity to discuss Roth because it was a hell of a race. It was your first long distance race. And do you want to just give us a recap on your experience on the day?
Yeah, it was obviously back to zero. It felt like I had no idea what to expect. I had no idea how I will perform on a long distance because you can be a really good 70.3 athlete and then just like perform badly on the Ironman distance or other way around. And I was always assuming it would suit me even better as longer it gets. So that was like what kind of kept me motivated, and also of course added a little bit of pressure for the race. But I perform under pressure, so it's just a good thing. And yeah, I think one big part in stepping up in the distance is definitely the nutrition. It's of course also already really important on the 70.3 distance, but I think on the Ironman it just really like becomes even more important. Like you can really ruin your race if you do it wrong. If you don't know how to fuel, or especially if you're searching for these last few percent which you need to get at the front of these races. You need every marginal gain, and it's not even a marginal gain. It's one of the big gains. So yeah, before the race we worked out like a very specific plan for the race. We were checking where the aid stations on the course, where do I grab water, where do I grab carbs, how much do I bring on my bike, how much do I bring on the run. The luxury in Roth is that on every aid station you can get stuff from your supporters, like kind of the special needs, they can hand it to you, and that's on every aid station, which is quite nice. Like you can prepare for a lot. So before the race, I was preparing like for like plan A, plan B, plan C, like not knowing how it will feel if anything goes wrong. And the end of the day, it was actually good, like especially in a run that I actually had to go to plan B. So yeah, I mean, I can start from the beginning. So the swim.
Before you do that, Fred, I want to touch on a point you made there. You said like, and it's something I hear, and I was actually talking to Holly Lawrence the other day as well, because she obviously just did Kona, and she said exactly the same thing. Like the 70.3, the T100s, you can get away with it, can't you? Like you can mess up your nutrition pretty badly, and I mean, they're so short now. Like, I mean, I say short, three and a bit hours, but it's still long for us. But it's short enough to get away with messing up. Whereas in the long distance, it's such a recurring theme. If you mess up your nutrition, you drop a bottle and you don't have that 100 grams of carbs or whatever for that 45 or that 60 minutes, it could signal like pretty much the end of your race, because you know you're going to be running very, very low on your fuel. It's just an interesting point that you make it. Holly's made it. I know Jan has made it as well. And I don't know, Nick, your experience with athletes and sort of their feedback on like the longer distance running and the nutrition.
Yeah, we're not like too big into nutrition yet, like with our app. So I've not like so much feedback from the customer side, but of course from my like own side. 2012, I did Roth as well, and till K20, I was feeling great, and until I wasn't after that. And then when I looked after the race afterwards, it was like pretty clear that I had perfect amount of carbs on the bike, but on the run, I was like at 30 to 40 because I had like a bit of stomach issues. And what happens when the stomach issue starts, then you just put in less because you think then it gets better. And then, what happens is just you run out of fuel, and then it gets a very long and tough day. And so I'm very, I know how it feels when you run out of fuel. And I didn't have like plan B, C or whatever. I had plan A, and then that was out of the window, and then I was left without anything. And that's how the race went. So I was in the WhatsApp group before with like Fred when you started to talk about like where to put which kind of nutrition, who is on which point to give Fred like splits or nutrition or whatever. And for me, it was the first time like really getting to know these kind of planning, and I find it like super interesting. And then afterwards, Fred already said it that he needed to switch to plan B, like to survive, because plan A didn't work out. And then I felt even more like an idiot for only having plan A and not like really looking into a nutrition strategy.
It's not uncommon though, honestly, Nick. And like, I think, and we'll talk about this with Fred, but like so many athletes, a lot of athletes don't even have plan A, to be honest. Like, it is incredible how many athletes do the training and then they get to race day and they're like, oh yeah, what am I going to do? I might try this product. They go and buy a product the day before a race because it's at the expo, and you're like, what are you doing? You've never used that product. And I think like the meticulous planning that went into, Freddie whilst he was in Australia, and Fred, you can talk about this. Like, when we first started, I think I remember saying to you, like, what's your sweat rate like? And you were like, I don't know. I sweat a bit. I'm a pretty heavy sweater. And I was like, okay, do you have an idea about like how many liters per hour you're losing? And he was like, I don't know. How do I do that? And, what do we do, Fred?
Yeah, so I think that was the most interesting part, like switching to full distance. And that's also like a thing which I was getting away with on the 70.3 and T100. Was the hydration more than the carb intake. I think I was always taking enough carbs like that. Of course, you can always step that up as well, which we also did. And if I would have done my first long distance without your guidance, Scott, I'm pretty sure I would have taken enough carbs, but definitely not enough hydration.
I'd agree with that. I think your carb intake, and I think a lot of athletes now, especially in your position, Fred, are in there's a better understanding of, hey, carbs are going to make me go fast, and obviously then working out how much you can take in. But I think your fluid intake, it was a big eye-opener for you to sort of go, okay, I really need to step this up.
And of course, the conditions when I was training in Australia were great for doing sweat testing. So just standing on the scale before the session, doing the session, and then just calculating how much you take in, and then standing on the scale after the session, and then just see how much liters you lose per hour. And especially on the sessions which were like in the middle of the day, I was losing up to 2 liters per hour. which is quite a lot.
It was, I think it was up there as like pretty much the highest I've seen out of any of the pro athletes I've worked with. So it was like, and obviously in Queensland, it's a big hot and humid conditions, but it was like, okay, Fred, you really now got to start to focus on your fluid intake on the bike. Because if you're coming off that bike 3% dehydrated, that marathon's going to be brutal.
Yeah, exactly. So we were calculating, where do I drink a bottle, where do I get a new bottle, and switch and all that. And I think the end of the day, I really was sticking like perfectly to the plan on the bike in Roth. I think it was really good to have something like that, especially for the first long distance. Like just something to stick to, like to get over this 180K and like get your mind off that you still got to run a marathon after. So this way it went by pretty quick, I have to say. It didn't feel like sitting on a bike for 4 hours, and definitely played a part that I had this nutrition plan. And I think in the end of the day, I was taking in almost 6 liters of liquid, and I think on the carbs, I think in the end I just missed one or two gels because I felt like I didn't need it. But up until that, I was about around that 140 grams an hour. So and we were talking about it before. We were like, if you can take those gels, it's good. If not, you're still at like 140 grams an hour. So and I think that was quite good.
Yeah, I mean, and just so everyone understands the details here, Fred, you carried 4 bottles you had 4 bottles, didn't you? Or 4?
Yeah, four bottles,
fluid,
exactly.
Yeah, and each of those bottles you had the Power Bar drink mix in there, and that had about 135 grams of carbs and 300 milligrams of sodium. And every hour you were then chasing that with a minimum of 1 full bottle of water. So you were chasing around 1.5 liters of fluid per hour and trying to push that in, which for anyone who's listening, like it is tough to get that amount of fluid in. Like, especially at what was your average power that you were pushing?
I had like 318 normalized power. And especially with the race dynamics, it's sometimes you forget. That happens to me at the 70.3 all the time. It's also not like that I learn from it, but you just gotta go with the race dynamics. And sometimes there's maybe 30-40 minutes where you just don't drink or eat anything, and then you're like, oh shit, and then you just try to get in as much as possible. But because it was my first long distance, I was trying to not get distracted too much by the race dynamics and still really focus on every opportunity to drink and eat.
Yeah, I think, look, your execution, I can't remember if you did or not. I usually recommend to an athlete to set like on their bike computer or on their watch to actually have an alarm that every 15 minutes sort of to go off and say, I always tell them just to put Fuelin on there, get your Fuelin in. But did you end up setting the alarm on your bike computer to fuel and drink?
I tried it already for the beginning of the season, like for our first race, since we were working together, which was T100 Singapore. So I tried to set it up, but then in the race, it just didn't come on. So it didn't really work. And then I was like, okay, I got to do it from my head.
You didn't do it right. That's funny because I did that in Roth for myself as well. And that's for the bike, it worked perfectly. But on the run, I didn't have it. And on the run, that's why I forgot to like get in the carbs, I guess. Do you do it on the run as well, on the watch with your athletes?
Yeah, look, I will set it up I would recommend setting it up on the bike computer. And again, depending on the intake, like obviously with Fred, he's taking in, I think we were shooting for, as you said, Fred, I think you're actually shooting for just under 160 grams. And what we worked out afterwards, you got in over 140 grams per hour of carbs. Now, given the intake there, he's got to be drinking sort of every 15 minutes. So his notification is going to go off every 15 minutes. For a lot of age group athletes who aren't pushing sort of, 300 with 320 normalized power that, their watch can go off every 20, 25, even every 30 minutes to get in sort of that maybe 60 to 70 grams of carbs an hour. So it's not incessant, because I think obviously when it's going off every 15 minutes, it is that constant reminder.
Yeah, the good thing is, I think with the racing dynamics, like even if it goes up like every 50 minutes, you don't know what situation you're in. Maybe you're in a downhill. Maybe you're trying to chase someone. So what we worked out before the race, that what helped me a lot is that you just told me this bottle has to be empty by kilometer 30.
That's right.
So I wasn't really focusing on just drinking every 50 minutes. So the only thing I was focused on, that this bottle is empty by kilometer 30, and
chucking it down at 29.
Yeah, exactly.
Like on a good party day.
Yeah, but even if that happens, like I had my nutrition spread over 4 bottles, so even if it's like still like quite full at 29, I think it's not such a big deal if I actually chuck it down. So yeah, that was quite good to stick to.
I think it's a really good point as well, because it shows you that no athlete is the same. And I think what works for one won't always work for the other. And, for Fred, he used a distance as that marker. Okay, I got to have this done. Okay, I remember in my head 30 Ks. For other athletes, it might be 30 minutes, or it might be 15 minutes or 20 minutes or whatever. And so I think for an athlete, find out what it is that is going to help you, ensure that you get the fuel in that you require at the appropriate time in order to fuel your race. And that is an individual. You're all sucking down hopefully the same types of carbohydrates. But the way in which you do that, that's sort of the individual approach. And that's, again, what we learned with Fred, I think when we go back to Queensland, Fred, and we think about, like, obviously you use Power Bar, but it was like, okay, what products of Power Bar are going to enable you to get in close to 160 grams? And it came down to, using your Power Bar drink, because your sweat rate is so high. We have to get the fluids in, plus we need to get the carbs in. Plus we also said, okay, we need a bit of sodium. We know that drink provides enough sodium.
How much was it with the sodium? 500 per hour?
Yeah, he was getting in around 550 milligrams per hour. So you've never really complained about cramping, have you, and an excessive sodium amount?
Yeah, not really. And also when I'm sweating a lot, I don't really, not used to have these salt marks, even though I'm sweating like a lot. So yeah, I think that's a good thing, that it's just a lot of water, I guess.
Yeah. And the point being is, like, for someone like Fred with a very high sweat rate, fluid replacement is going to be really important. And generally speaking, look, you replace 60 to 70% of fluid loss. Now, that's a typical recommendation. Obviously, about to run a marathon, and I think this is something that we tried really hard. We said, okay, we've got to go above that 60 to 70% fluid replacement, because if we only left it at 60 or 70% fluid replacement of his peak sweat rate, we know that he's probably going to be going into the marathon 2 or 3% dehydrated. So we actually wanted to bump that up to try and get him coming off the bike as hydrated as possible, to give him the best chance to actually have a really good run off the bike. And that means just taking in a lot more fluid than maybe typically, especially for a 70.3 distance.
How you recommend, like, someone to find it out? Like, we talked about the sweat rate, like step on the scale before a session and after a session. I guess it should be a session with some efforts that you get close, like to race pace efforts, or?
Yeah, look, we typically, like with Fred, what we said is any sessions over an hour that are of zone 3 or above, we would do sweat rate testing. And, look, you can do it a number of ways. Obviously, within the Fuelin app, it makes it easy. You just enter your starting weight, you enter your finishing weight, and then enter in the total amount of fluids you consume, all the products and everything. It does all the calculations and then gives you an estimated sweat rate, an estimated fluid intake rate, and an estimated recommended fluid intake rate. And it will give you the milligrams per hour, milligrams per liter of sodium consumption, and then obviously your carb consumption as well. So the great thing, and everyone always says this, they're always like, how do I do a sweat rate test? I've got to go and pay someone. It's like, no, you just need a bathroom scale, and that's it. And it was probably one of the pieces of equipment you use most, throughout the build. It was like, let's do heaps and heaps of these sweat rate tests to try and narrow the range on how much Fred's going to require.
Okay, so you just repeat the process like a lot of the times to gather some data, and then it's like the app does all the calculations and puts in all the data you plug in, and then calculates it for you. Oh, awesome.
Yeah, it's nice because you also add the temperature and humidity, and then like for the next session, depending on the temperature and humidity, it recommends you based on the data you put in. So I obviously don't you lose 2 liters an hour when it's just 15 degrees. Like in the beginning of the bike in Roth, it was still not that hot, of course. So overall, it was definitely less than that per hour. So yeah, that was quite helpful.
I think and it is a really good point. So after you've submitted 3 tests into Fuelin, Nick, the athlete will get a personalized recommendation for 26 above or below 26 degrees Celsius. And then, and the thing with Fred, yes, above 26, I think we had this average of sort of 1.95 liters, but below 26, I think it was around 1.5 liters, 1.4, 1.5.
Oh.
So for the race, his estimated intake was 1.3 liters is what we were shooting for. So we were definitely shooting very high of his predicted sweat loss in that temperature at Roth.
Just to make sure he's above his level and never gets in dehydration.
Yeah, and look, there's always a risk with that because overconsumption of fluids is probably more risky than dehydration. Hyponatremia, it can kill you. However, given he's taking in carbohydrates, he is taking in sodium, he has a high sweat rate, he's performing a fair bit of exercise, and we're pretty comfortable he's not going to get in, even with an intake of 1.3 liters. He's not meeting anywhere near his predicted sweat rate. I was fairly comfortable with Fred taking in that amount, and I think so was Fred. He didn't ever complain of GI complaints or anything like that.
Yeah, but it's super interesting, that you really need to do this testing to know it for yourself. Not just, I need to drink more.
Yeah. And I think I said to Fred the first time, he was like, how many tests do I need to do? And I was like, mate, as many as possible. It's not one and done test. It's just keep doing them to learn more about yourself in the different conditions at the different intensities. So that you start to narrow that range. I think at the start we had sort of a sweat range of 1 liter to nearly 2 liters. And it's what do you do with that? Okay, do I go 1 liter or do I go 2 liters? So then as he builds more in, he starts to recognize, okay, as it gets really hot, my sweat rate goes right up. But under that sort of 26 degrees, it's not unmanageable. Now, the implications of that, obviously, for somewhere like Kona, then it's going to be, okay, now you really got to manage this. And that's where the aid stations are probably going to become super important.
It's very interesting because of course, in our podcast, Fred and I, we talked a lot about, he's always telling, heat is not a problem for me. But without these tests on the longer distance, you would have just for sure be dehydrated on the marathon at some time if you didn't test it.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, heat is not a problem, but of course you gotta cool, you gotta hydrate. It's the most important thing, and gets even more important if you're sweating that much.
Yeah. So yeah, look, I think from the bike perspective, Freddie, you'd practiced it so many times and were so comfortable with it. It really went off without a hitch. And Nick, you mentioned the WhatsApp group. I mean, hats off to your wife, Freddie, for the military operation that was the WhatsApp group in the nutrition. It was pretty spectacular watching it. I was just sort of sitting back watching it. But and you went into the run. Just talk us through the run.
Yeah, so on the run we planned. I was working with like flasks, and each flask I had two gels topped up with like 200 milliliters of liquid. So again, so from the beginning, I tried to just get in. Just get hydrated. Also use, of course, every aid station at least for water, for drinking and for cooling. And it's good because you got a aid station every 2.5 kilometers for the whole marathon. And then every 10 kilometer, I was trying to get a new flask from one of my supporters. So basically, have this 60 grams per 10 kilometer, which is which is around that 90 grams per hour, which we calculated. So it's not anymore like this crazy much, but because I took a lot on the bike, it's quite a good number, which I know I will definitely feel comfortable also later on the run, because we also didn't know how much can I take in on a marathon without getting any issues, any stomach problems. So of course it was also the first long distance also like a big test. If that works well for the next one, of course we can try to step it up a bit. But that was like a safe option. And as we said, the hydration and liquid was almost even more important. And but then after, I took the first flask. I also finished it, and then I got the new one at kilometer 10. Tried to take one sip and almost had to throw everything up. So and then I was like, oof, that's getting tough now. I don't think I can take any more gels. Otherwise, I have to throw up. I don't know why it was exactly. Maybe it just the taking so much overall, or was it just like the day? I think it's also like on some days you can take endlessly, on some days you just can't. And it also got more hot on the run, so it also could be because of that. Just my body can't take any more of the sweet gels. So then we switched to plan B, which was Coke simply. And then I just was shouting to a supporter on the side of the road that he should text in a WhatsApp group that I now need Coke at the aid stations. And then I had flask prepared with 200 milliliters of Coke, which I got at every other aid station, and that I could drink really well. And I think by the end of the marathon, we calculated, I think, over 1.5 liters of Coke. So I was still at an overall carb consumption of, I think, 75 grams an hour. Yep. Which is like almost just with Coke. It's actually not too bad.
How much is in there? I never really looked it up.
It's like I think is it 20 grams per 100 milliliters, Scott?
Yeah, well, in a can of Coke is 375 mils, and I could get this wrong.
In Germany, it's 0.33 liters.
0.33 liters. I think there's around 30. 35. Yeah, so that would be around, it's about 20 grams per 200, 20 grams of sugar first, or carbohydrates per 200 mils. So that's what we were shooting for. So I think you ended up taking in, what, six or seven of those fast, didn't you, in the Coke?
Yeah, and then on the aid stations as well. So not just the flasks, and also on the aid stations, I got the big cups of Coke and tried to drink it all, yeah.
But that's like super interesting as well, because when you want to switch to Coke and you don't have like Fred prepared like the 200 ml flask at the aid station with the small cups, that's no way you get enough fuel.
Yeah, definitely not that much.
And that's why, look, Roth's very unique in that, like, you don't usually get that opportunity. And the plan was from sort of 28 Ks or about an hour 40 in, he was going to switch to Coke anyway. So we always had that in the plan, because my feeling was he won't cope with any more gels, given that it's his first full distance Ironman, the amount of carbs he's taking in on the bike, you'll start the run, you get to about 21 Ks into the run, and you're like, I do not want to see another gel. And so we sort of had that in the back of our mind. Anyway, he just started a little bit earlier, which wasn't a problem because he was like, okay, I'm just starting earlier. Now, the issue, or not the issue, but I guess the reality comes with like something like Ironman Switzerland, where you don't have, the ability to have these bottles laid out. Obviously, somewhere like Kona, you do have multiple aid stations, pro aid stations, where you can plan out bottles. But what I found out this year was you could only have one type of bottle, and the bottle had to be the same for all aid stations, which was very interesting. So then you've sort of now got to make a decision. What are you going to put into the aid stations to feel comfortable? Now, there is Coke available at the aid stations, and for the pros, it's definitely a lot easier for them to get ice cold Coke because they're at the front. But it is, again, it's something just to consider, I think, for anyone listening. Like, how are you going to manage that, the end of the run or midway through the run? What are you going to do? And what is, if you can't handle gels, what's your next step, and have you practiced that?
Is there a difference you make, like when you work with age groupers and pros? Because like pros obviously have way more training load, way more time to focus and test and really get to, like, we always say like train your gut. But is it like for age groupers you recommend, like, for example, switching earlier to Coke like on the run, or is it you keep the same system for like no matter pros or amateurs?
No, look, I think it comes down to what you practice. A lot of age groupers will go through exactly what they practice in training. So, the way we'll structure it in Fuelin is anything with zone 3 or above of significant duration. Let's say for a run, it's at least over 60 minutes, and for a bike, it's probably over 75 minutes. They're going to be encouraged to take in carbohydrates. Now, the amount of carbohydrates that they're taking in is going to be personal at the start in terms of, okay, we'll recommend an upper threshold. But similar to the sweat rate testing, once they've done 3 tests, and if their average intake, Nick, is like 40 grams of carbs, well, that's going to be their initial personalized recommendation, probably somewhere between 40 and 60, because that's probably going to be what they can tolerate at that time. And that may be based on just their pure power output. Maybe they just aren't producing that much power and they actually only require 40 or 50 grams of carbs. Now, or it could be like you described, maybe they're just not very good at taking in carbs because they've never done it, which again is a very common, circumstance that we're seeing. Is a lot of athletes are like, what do you mean? I do 2-hour hard sessions and never take in any carbs. You want me to take it in? Oh, okay. Oh, I feel terrible when I take in carbs. So you got to build that up gradually. And as they build up their intake per hour, and as they track that within Fuelin, they'll then be given higher amounts as recommendations to continue that journey until they find their sweet spot. And look, there is, whilst the science is like, okay, we know higher amount of carbohydrate intake is going to allow for improved performance, we don't have all the fancy equipment to test everyone's sort of exogenous carbohydrate intake or oxidation. So we don't know what that is. So there is going to be a little bit of guesswork, and that's going to be related to the individual, how they're feeling, their absolute intensity or their absolute run pace. And then sort of putting those pieces of the puzzle together to work out, how high should you go?
Is this something you do, or Fred can tell it, what you do in the future? Like to test all the things possible with like metabolism and stuff and see what else you can do?
I mean, yeah, we're trying to, if it's possible, definitely with some very useful information. And I think it's also coming. Like I hear from my coach Dan Lorang, who is with Red Bull Bora, a cycling team, that they are doing it now. So yeah, I think it's something which will definitely then come into the triathlon world as well. Probably the Norwegians doing it as well. So
look, there's definitely the ability to do it is so far limited to universities and specialized testing facilities. There are apparently some new companies on the market where you can actually pay for a testing kit, and it will test the exogenous glucose oxidation. Now, I think that provides some value potentially to the athlete. And yes, we've talked about doing this with Fred. If we can go and get, testing, basic testing done, metabolic testing, RMR, fat max, VO2 max. And if on top of that, we can then look at, okay, what is this exogenous carbohydrate oxidation, glucose? Is that very high? Okay, that gives us an indication we can probably max out at least the glucose component of his fuel. Now, given Power Bar is a maltodextrin and fructose mixture, there's the other component, the fructose, that no one at this point in time, as far as I'm aware, has any way of measuring sort of the fructose oxidation. And I think that's the key one, because it doesn't apparently have, based on what we understand with the research in the gut, is it doesn't have a limiter. So there are these transporters in the gut that are probably the limitation on how much glucose one individual can oxidize. So once that's saturated,
that's where these like 60 for fructose and 60 for glucose comes in.
Correct.
But it's not 100% sure if like the glucose is really limited at 60.
Correct.
The fructose.
But even glucose is not limited to 60. So
again, really? That's like the information I had. Or I thought
even the original like 2-to-1 ratio, that's just based on like the way they structured the scientific research, that it was 60 grams of glucose or maltodextrin. And then it was like, okay, well, let's put 30 grams in. It's a nice equation. It's just a nice way of doing it. And so then there was 2-to-1, and then it was 60 and 30. And what was proposed was that 60 grams was the upper limit of glucose that an athlete could possibly take in. Now, that seems to be getting sort of dispelled as a bit of a myth, especially for those individuals who may be habitually taking in a lot more glucose or carbohydrates. What we might see, because again, a lot of that research is done on individuals who don't take in a lot of carbs. So now if you start assessing athletes like Fred, you start assessing someone like Fred who has a zone 2 of what, 280 watts or something, and like is just, crazy. And then at his race pace. Yeah. I mean, like if you're pushing, like 330 watts, 340 watts, like you've got to imagine his ability to utilize carbohydrates is going to be better than someone who's got 150 watts as their normalized power. So now they're saying, okay, maybe it's not 60 grams. Maybe it is 80 grams. Maybe it's even 90 grams just for glucose. And then fructose, we start layering that on. There's no potential upper limit to that because the transporters don't seem to have this saturation point. How high can we go? But on the flip side of that, what I have heard is that some of these athletes who still produce pretty good power actually can't oxidize some of these carbohydrates very well. And that's why they get a lot of these GI complaints when they start taking in 120, 130, 140 grams of carbs. So now you're thinking with someone, and I know I'm ranting, but it's pretty exciting because then you start thinking, okay, well, Fred can take in 160 grams of carbs with no GI complaints. And then I'm like, well, hold on. Even if you tally that up, let's say 150 grams, it's 600 calories per hour, from exogenous carbs that he's burning. His estimated caloric expenditure is what, 1,200, 1,300, 1,400 an hour. So you start to see there's still a pretty big gap.
Yeah.
Now he's going to be relying on fat and also endogenous, so glycogen. But can we bridge that gap even more by maybe saying, can he take in 180 grams? Can he use that? Can he take in 200 grams? Who knows?
And that's something, Fred, you want to try out in training now? Or how you do you step up? Do you just say, okay, fill my bottles, double down, 200 grams in training?
You always gotta test, try out. It's not like I haven't tried it out yet, taking in like 180 grams an hour or more. And I think it's also a fine balance, because I think once you're over a point where your body starts working very inefficient because of so many carbs, So basically then starts using way less fats. So I think it's like you got to find that point where you feel really good. But because when I took like 180 to 200 grams an hour once or twice, I did it, not often, but I actually didn't feel that good in training. But then when I have my 150, 160, I feel really good, like also by the end of the session, because I'm still efficient as well. So yeah, I think it's just like for sure also something you can train, but then also still something where you got to find that point and find that balance.
And I think the point being here is that if you then say, okay, Fred's taking in 180, 200, if you're using a lot of these products, and again, it's probably going to have to be a discussion with someone like PowerBar, how do we manage this? Because their formulation is what it is, which is going to contain a certain amount of maltodextrin glucose versus a smaller amount of fructose. So as you get into the really large amounts, actually we need to bump up the fructose and not so much of the maltodextrin. And that's where it probably, like if you think about what I said, like, okay, maybe 80 grams of maltodextrin an hour is like the upper threshold. So at 160 grams of carbs, he's probably getting up into that 80, 90 grams of the maltodextrin with that product. But we actually then need to layer in potentially more fructose into the situation to allow him to take in maybe higher and higher amounts. So then it's potentially, playing around with the mix a little bit more.
But then it's like, when you look at this way, it's for the pros. And then when you hear like a lot of people get problems with high fructose levels, I think for the like power bars and whatever, it's also a risk to put in more fructose, because like when people use it and not like the pros get GI issues.
For sure.
So it's
like, and what I'm talking about here, Nick, is like, you're then making some custom blends.
Yeah.
And
okay.
Fred might be adding.
It's super interesting.
He might be adding additional fructose into his actual drink mix into an already off the shelf product. And I'm not saying to every age group athlete you need to be doing this, like, because
everyone's now
go back
it.
to what I said. No one's doing 330 watts, like, as their normalized power. So it's, again, when you're talking about someone like Fred, you're talking about a very unique situation, an individual who, I guess it's not unique now, is it, Fred? So many guys are pushing these numbers that it's terrifying, the power that's being put out and the speeds that the guys are running. I mean, we were having a joke, weren't we, about Nice, and you're sort of like, you think the marathon is going to be a gentle pace, or at least, okay, and then you see those 5 guys running 3:30-minute Ks, and you're like, geez, it's it's just a different game these days.
Yeah, definitely. That's why especially the pros gotta work on every percent, on every marginal gain in nutrition, but also everywhere else. And I think that's the difference. I think if you want to go from 7-hour 40 to 7-hour 20 or 7-hour 30 in the Ironman, but I don't think that's the big change you need to make if you want to go from, don't know, 11:30 to sub 11. I think there are probably some different things you can work on first before stepping up your nutrition to 120, 140 grams an hour.
No, 100%. And I think that comes back to like, again, you're an interesting athlete, I think, because, when we talked about your day-to-day nutrition, you're pretty good. Like, you have a good understanding of protein and what types of proteins to consume and fats and potentially better sources of fat than other sources and how to limit that and how to cook. And I think your point there, Fred, like so many athletes focus on just their carb intake in sessions and they forget about all the day-to-day nutrition. And I think that's one of the things with Fuelin we're really trying to educate athletes is like, it's what goes into your body around the training that is probably going to have the biggest impact on your performance, your body composition, your health.
Fred, that's a question I have for you. Like, did you change what did you change when you start working with Scott and Fueling in your like day-to-day nutrition? Because we've been on several training camps together, and your main sauce on the breakfast was like churros and Nutella,
Or a Fanta.
and heaps of Fanta. So easy carbs, bad fats from the churros. Like, did you? Of course, like training camps is a different story, but in your day to day life, did you change a lot there? Because like I feel your day to day nutrition wasn't always perfect.
Yeah, I think especially in those training camps, you have definitely this extra plate of pancake, churros, and Nutella. But I think if you watch the base there, you probably haven't. You only looked at my pancakes plate. But,
I've only seen pancakes.
but I think the base it's not that much different. It's like I think always like having very like balanced nutrition in my day-to-day life, and then of course when it comes to when you're burning up to 8,000 calories a day because of training so much, then of course you top it up with some of those kind of carbs. But yeah, I think generally what changed is definitely trying to add even more protein to my meals. I think I was already looking at it before, but now when I could really see, when I was like tracking it on Fuelin and could really see how much protein I was taking, and I was still like 60 grams below the recommended daily amount. From that moment I was like, okay, wow, I just need to pump up my protein. I think that was like the biggest change, and then the rest, it's just like some of the basics, but it's not like that. I completely changed all my like what I ate. I had my meals and just added more protein. Maybe the timing and amount, like that's the nice thing with Fuelin. You know, I have my training peaks plan, which Dan puts in for me, which is then over in the Fuelin app, and then depending on the session, it says how much carbs and protein and fats I should take in before that session and after that session. Like, of course, depending on the length and intensity. And I think that's something which just helps, like as a guidance. Okay, now I have this very hard session coming up, so obviously there's gotta pump up my carbs before that, or on the days which are a bit easier, actually, where I would just like, don't know, keep on taking the carbs. I was actually maybe then taking back a bit on the carbs, but eating more, more fats and more proteins. I think that was the changes.
I think, Nick, and to your point, I have this discussion with Jan a lot because Jan probably is, as a lot of you know, and he's very open about it, and we talk about it a lot. He, very focused on the clean eating, and we always, have a joke about the clean eating. He says, clean eating, washing your chocolate underwater and all that sort of stuff. Terrible joke. Definitely a dad joke. But I think for someone like Fred, where the energy expenditure is so high, eating clean comes a risk. And a risk there is the underfueling, because you're so hell-bent on I can only eat vegetables, or I can only eat, this and that. And I can't possibly eat churros or pancakes or bread or pastries. No. And that's the distinction I think a lot of athletes have to understand is when you look at someone, I'm not saying you go out there and eat McDonald's every day or anything like that. But I think there's also that argument that actually at some point in time, we need to get the calories into Fred to maintain that energy intake. Whereas for a lot of maybe we talk age group athletes, they may have the perception, oh, I need churros, I need pancakes, I need all that. But their energy expenditure is 2,500 calories, across the day, and they're trying to lose body fat. well, actually, we need to now put you into a calorie deficit. If you're eating all that, you're probably just over consuming calories. And despite all the really good training you're doing, that's why you're not seeing the results in terms of things like body composition changes. And so I think it is like nearly polar opposites. Managing the high, if you've got the athlete, and thankfully Fred's not in that sort of category where he's, so focused on body composition and so focused on I need to look a certain way and things like that, that it's actually easy for him to say, okay, yes, we could probably reduce the Fanta intake and things like that. And we've had discussions around that, but it's also like, hey, there's nothing wrong. There's nothing wrong with like pancakes and churros when it's required. When he's at altitude camp, I mean, I think we were prescribing something like 9,000 calories a day. And like to get 9,000 calories in is like, you just got to be sucking back on whatever you can get. You need some Fanta. So, but and we, unfortunately, we've had the experience with, some athletes where they have this sort of orthorexia, which is that obsession with clean eating, disordered eating patterns, eating disorders. And it's really enlightening, I think, to myself and the other practitioners on Fuelin when we help these athletes understand that it's okay to eat these so-called bad foods in order to fuel their body for the work that they need to do. And once I think they can start to see fuel or food as a fuel rather than something that is like either good or bad, I think that's a real turning point in any athlete's journey. And it really, it flicks that switch in them to say, actually, I need this fuel because I'm trying to do something that's really difficult and really demanding.
Yeah, so it's actually the most important part, like to get in enough.
Yeah, I mean, in Fred's case, it's like, you got to get it in. But then, there are going to be those athletes who do overconsume and they don't need that much, and actually pulling back on them. And, in their case, like one of the things that we push a lot in Fuelin, and Fred will always see it, it's like, your 2 fists of leafy greens in every meal. Like when we can encourage athletes to eat vegetables, we will. And I think there's this common misconception in especially triathletes, endurance athletes, that fiber is bad for them. And it's like, no, fiber is not bad for you. It's probably not the thing you need to be eating a lot of on the morning of race day or the carbohydrate load day the day before. But during the week, on a normal training week, you should be aiming for around 14 grams of fiber per 1,000 calories. Like that's the general rule that you should be trying to get. Now, how much fiber is that? That's like, probably at least 6 serves of vegetables per day. Maybe 2 pieces of fruit and 5 to 6 serves of veggies. A lot of athletes won't be getting that in. And like, I love it when we get feedback from athletes and they're like, I've never eaten so much food and so many vegetables in my life. And it's like, it's amazing. I feel incredible. And it's, again, for some athletes, that's very easy. It's very normal to eat a lot of vegetables. But for a lot of athletes, they're like, I've never done this before. I don't cook vegetables. I don't eat vegetables. I thought they weren't really that important, or I didn't realize that I could eat them, even though I'm biking, swimming, and running.
It's again super interesting when you talk like a lot about nutrition, and you always think it's super hard because it's so individual, but like it's not really. Like just look at the calories you burn. You need to fill up, and then of course if it's not like race day, eat as much in veggies as well as you can, and add with enough protein and carbs and fat, and done.
Look, there's scientific principles that are based on randomized controlled studies, on meta-analyses, on systematic reviews that fit men and women from a nutrition perspective. For an endurance athlete, we're definitely going to prescribe a moderate to high protein intake. Fat is going to be, it's going to be moderate to high, depending on the total training load. As training load goes up, you need to get your calories from somewhere, so fat intake's going to go up. And then your carbohydrates, as Fred mentioned, like it's going to be periodized around his training. And that's exactly the approach we would recommend. And I think any decent nutritionist or dietitian who understands the principles of performance nutrition around endurance training is going to periodize those carbohydrates in line with what the athlete is trying to achieve. High performance, high intensity, long duration. You're going to give more carbohydrates before that session, during that session, and probably after that session to help them recover. And so I think that's where, it doesn't have to be complicated. I think what we're trying to do here is just make it super easy. So an athlete sees a traffic light, they see red, they go, okay, it's lower amounts of carbs. Yellow, it's a moderate amount of carbs. Green, go time, baby. Like, I can eat as much carbs as I want and I'm going to feel good. And that's pretty much like, you want it to become that simple where it becomes that sort of conditioned learning. So
It's funny. Like in our app, we have the same traffic light, but for intensity. Like green
cool.
is easy and stay in the green, moderate, orange, and red. When it's go time, then you can.
So it will be. So then for your athletes, it will be like a little bit of the reverse. They will see green for us and go, okay, lots of carbs.
Red in Pushing Limits Club is green and Fuelin. Mix it up.
So that's cool.
Maybe we need to align.
Yeah. I know we're on the hour, and I don't want to take your time anymore. I know we had so much to cover here, and we can probably do another one at another time. Freddie, I know you're in the off season now. Just for everyone, what's the off season entail, and what is the next race you're targeting to qualify for Kona 2026?
Yeah, so off season means not training. Like I did it in the last years. I was usually not training for like 2 weeks, like really doing nothing, and then just trying to do like fit for fun, how Dan, my coach always calls it, for another 2 weeks, and then get back into structured training. But now it's like the whole 4 weeks fit for fun. I even did some run races on the weekends, like some local ones, and was just like enjoying my home, the mountains, and enjoying the autumn, and just doing some easy training every day, and then in like 2 weeks. Next week actually, I get back to structured training, and then all our focus is on Ironman New Zealand, beginning of March 2026, which is also the first Ironman Pro Series race, and my next chance to hopefully qualify for Kona next year.
I have no doubt that will be the case, Fred. I think everything's building, and I know we had chats about this. Like it's been that sort of transition year for you and finding your feet again, which sounds weird, but like I think it's been such an interesting year working with you and seeing your progress in the long distance. And I think 2026 is going to be an absolute cracker.
Yeah, I hope so.
Very good. Nick, from you, final wrap-up, final thoughts before we sign off?
Super interesting. And I definitely need to download the German Fuelin app and get my sweat rate tested.
Yeah. Well, look,
that's like the biggest thing for me, because like, to be honest, I've never looked into that as well. Fred already told me a few times, but it's like always, I don't need it. But like when you hear in depth and talk about it, and then it is. You always listen to podcasts, you always look at the pros, what they do, and then when you talk with you, and it's always so clear that it's super individual, and you need to test it. You need to look at yourself. Same when I do Fred's training, I will not get better. I will get injured. So it's the same. I need to look at my training. I need to see what my body needs and what I can do. And same is with nutrition. So that was a very, very good reminder for me as well in the podcast. So a lot of takeaways for me personally.
Awesome. I'm glad you enjoyed it. Well, look, I know Yeah, look, I'm excited about the launch into Germany. As I said, it's happening on I think the 22nd of October, with the app going live and the integration with Pushing Limits, which is super exciting. And we've got the integration with Human Go as well with Fred's sessions that I've been doing recently. And it's certainly I'm not going to be Fred Funk by doing those sessions, but they're enjoyable nonetheless. Um, what I am keen to talk about, and we'll definitely get you guys back on, is I'm interested in the German athletes, or the duck, if I say that correctly, the German, the Austrian, and the Swiss athletes, and sort of the cultural differences. Maybe some tips from you guys with regards to food and fueling and things that might be slightly different from, say, the Aussies and the Americans. And I think we can cover that next time. And Nick, once you've jumped into Fuelin and we've got your sweat rate and your carb capacity,
Yes.
Freddie and I can rip you apart and see what's happening.
For sure,
Awesome.
Let's do that.
Awesome. Well, guys, thanks so much. Super interesting and super entertaining. So thank you for the chat.
Thanks, guys.